Welcome back, everybody. Johnny Romero tuned in with Intersys, and with our hashtag More Than Bilingual series, I'm very happy to have with me today a special guest and colleague, Patrice Dussault, who is an English to French content writer on economics, culture, automotive, society for companies, NGOs, and governments. Thank you for joining us today, Patrice.
Thank you for having me. It's a genuine pleasure to be here.
And, I really enjoy your content. Right now, I noticed you have the top technical translation voice badge on LinkedIn. You have very engaging content with our community. And with this series, we're really sharing the stories behind the language professionals like yourself. And it's interesting because as we talk about how you got into translation, my understanding, it has to do with a little bit of a family legacy. Is that correct?
It is correct. You did your research right. My parents used to own a translation agency that they bought in 1973 and kept for 19 years. So one could say that I fell into it when I was little. I was exposed to multilingualism and multiculturalism from a very early stage on, and I loved the editing and the translation industry feel. So after my studies and a short stint in finance, I felt not very comfortable, not very at home, and decided to set myself up as a freelance translator. And originally starting with agencies. So I was contacted by a Montreal agency. I drove to their offices, passed the test, took a test, passed it, and then I met the president who asked me questions. And she said during the interview, I noticed that you never studied translation. Is that correct? Yes, it is. She said, do you have any prior experience as a translator? Well, a teeny tiny bit of experience with my parents' agency. And then she replied, can you start this afternoon? I said, sure, I can start this afternoon. So that was 24 years ago, and I never stopped since.
That's awesome. And I'm sure over the years you've seen many changes. And you are located in Canada, Montreal, province of Quebec. In your particular area, what have been some of those changes over the years that have made an impact on the profession, and how have you adapted to that?
Legally, there have not been changes really, and structurally either, because there hasn't been a strong consolidation phase among agencies or large agencies. Maybe it is starting now, but it would be a very new phenomenon. So the main change comes from software development. In the mid 2000s, I started working with SDL Trados and translation memories. That was an adaptation, but it went quite well. Then about 10 years later, machine translation or neuronal machine translation appeared, and that was a bigger change and a bigger adaptation. The learning curve was a little steeper, and getting to post-edit, what we call NTPE or machine translation post-editing, required more adaptation. I did very little, but what happens is that a machine will generate a first draft of the translation, then a human gets involved to edit the first draft and complete the research to make sure the tone, voice, and specific terms of a said client are respected. And then there's also editing for grammar and style. And so it's another job in itself. And I've had to adapt commercially as well by repositioning my services as more upscale, offering more customized services to the luxury industry. It's a good thing. We'll talk about it later. I understand that I love luxury motor cars, so I've made contacts and new clients in that field. I've been working for Canadian research institutes regarding the motor car industry's labor market for the past 8 years at least. And when you go into more specialized areas or more upscale niche products, be they services or products, you need more human intervention and less machine intervention because everything is customized. So that's how I adapted. You have to move upward. Like one of my friends published in an article last year, in a world of Walmarts, you have to be a Chanel.
Like that.
To make it as a translator, yes.
Beautiful. And I think, some of the things that for those that are novice or just getting to discover on that learning curve, the benefits of having a professionally trained translator, experienced subject matter expert to provide what we were talking about offline, bespoke, you know, uh, provided, translation. And for those that are unfamiliar with that term, it really is having to do with that customization and that human intervention specifically, because there are certain things that as technology develops and evolves, it still has its limits. And I know there's this trepidation and fear by many people of, will humans be replaced? And many times we have to educate our clients, because I think the perception in some cases is I just hit a button and voila, everything just it just happens, right? And it just doesn't work that way. And so, as it pertains to that, in your particular niche, you mentioned, we'll talk about that now, in the automotive industry. You are a historian, an automotive historian. That's very interesting. Can you tell me a little bit about how that all came about?
Sure. I started with by completing a bachelor's degree in history from the University of Montreal. After which I joined the Society of Automotive Historians, which is based in the United States, but has an international membership. And I wrote an article for them, and I also got involved in the Moving Beauty exhibit that was curated by the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts in 1995, where I served as consultant and tour guide, during the entire summer. And I was also on the board of directors of a private car club in Montreal called Vintage European Automobile, and also editor of their magazine. So I've been involved in the field for many, many years. And to complete my bachelor's studies in history, and I've also been buying and reading books for the past couple of decades, and a quarter of my entire bookcase space is made up of automotive history books.
Nice. So you're practically the Jay Leno of language service providers, right? In our niche, I'm going to call you. You're the equivalent of that. That's
I would never have made the connection. But by the way, Jay Leno is a member of the Society of Automotive Historians.
Look at that. See that? So he's got some competition now. I'm close. I'm like, basically, when you talk about 6 degrees of separation, I'm not that far from Jay Leno, basically, is what you're telling me.
Well, I think it's a strong 6 degrees. It's at least 6 degrees. I've never met him, obviously, but I'd love to, because his practical knowledge and experience are second to none. Because from his personal collection and the automobiles of guests that he's had over at his garage, he tried so many different cars over the past decades that his knowledge is difficult to replicate. His intimate knowledge of the inner workings and the behavior and the feeling of different types of cars is difficult to replicate. He's very in a league of his own.
Sure. And so, if you're watching this, Jay Leno, we're putting it out there. Give us a call. Our next episode will be with Jay. There you go. We're putting it out into the ether. So we'll see if that happens.
Love it. Hope it works.
Excellent. So you have been able to apply these skills and this knowledge in your profession. Specifically, one of your most recent posts talked about how you were able to translate 36 new automotive terms. Can you share a little bit of how that happened, high level, and how that was able to really fit with your passion, obviously?
Yes. I've been working with the Canadian research institutes for the past 8 years, and they focus on the motor industry labor market and its evolution and its adaptation to new technologies today. Now, with the introduction of AI and other computerized tools into the design and manufacturing of motor cars, new job descriptions had to be developed, because those positions did not exist before, those workers did not exist before. So the research institutes came up with 36 new job titles in English to fit those new tasks that need to be done now within the motor car industry. Since these titles did not exist in French, after days of research, benchmarking, reflection, and time, and sleeping over my reflection, I came up with 36 new position titles in French, which today I'm proud to say are being used within the industry. So they're official position titles.
Congratulations on that. Kudos. Yeah,
Thank you.
that's phenomenal. And it really shows then how I think the beauty as we talk about more than bilingual, how it's not just a language element. It's also fitting it with some of these cultural nuances. And that could be, again, culture is very broad. It can be in arts, it can be in automotive, it could be music. I know these are some of the things also that you enjoy as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the beauty of what we do is being able to do what we love, and at the same time help other people. Because a lot of times, when we identify the importance of communicating the meaning of a word in a target language or the language of the heart, it takes much more than technology. It takes, a lot more. Go ahead, please.
Oh no, so I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just enthused by what you just said, and it's absolutely true. It's formal training, it's experience, it's intimate knowledge of an industry's vocabulary and way of saying things in both languages, and it's also a labor of love. It's the energy that keeps me going comes in part from the fact that it's one of my passions in life. Collectible motor cars and its labor markets, and it's fascinating. And the changes that the industry is facing now are overwhelming sometimes, and a lot of jobs are at stake. So the model of transition for auto workers that is being developed right now by the Canadian Research Institutes will be exportable in the near future. And I'm very, very proud to be participating in their initiative.
Fantastic. I think that's very interesting too, as we are able to see how this skill set is really enabling initiatives to move forward, right?
Yes.
And so that's exciting, and I think very inspirational at the same time. I want to respect your time here, and so I want to talk a little bit about some of the cultural elements where you're located. I'm a foodie, and I the closest that I've ever gotten to Canada is Buffalo, New York. You're not far from
No.
that end of the country, but I unfortunately have yet to travel into Canada. It is on my list of places to go. So if I am just like currently unfamiliar with Montreal, I've seen pictures that look beautiful. Actually, some of the scenes I've seen in the city remind me of Europe in many ways. So what would you recommend would be on my list of maybe priorities of what to do first if I'm visiting your city for the first time?
That's a great topic. And it's funny that you should mention food, because many people when they learned that I'm from Montreal, they say, "Oh my God, I love to eat, and I've learned about your restaurants, and the best tables in Montreal are supposed to be second to none," and so on. So if you come to Montreal, one of the first things you have to do is start with the finer restaurants. We have a wide array of restaurants and chefs from here and Europe, and you will be very, very well served. There's also a fine establishment that I love in Old Montreal, which does look like older European cities. You are right. And I love to go there or bring friends who are over from Europe, because they get to taste a chef's take on traditional recipes, French Canadian recipes that date back to the colonization era.
Nice.
So that's what you have to start. There's also obvious museum stops like Montreal Museum of Fine Arts, and there's Museum of Modern Arts, and there's a Canadian Architecture Center, and so on and so on. There are many other places. And we also are known for our music festivals, like the International Jazz Festival.
I think it's arguably the largest in the world, from my understanding. And I love jazz, by the way. So that's something that I definitely had on my list. So I'm glad you brought that up. Now, is that a certain time of year?
Yeah, in the summer.
In the summer, okay.
Yeah, it's about 2 weeks long, and it's in midsummer. And I've attended, obviously, because I love jazz, and I'm a big audiophile as well. music fan and audiophile, and I love jazz, and I love the jazz festival, which is arguably as you mentioned, the largest in the world. Not to take anything away from the other jazz festivals, which
Sure,
are
sure.
also incredible. But it's worth the visit. It's worth the detour. You have to come. You're
Nice.
going to love it. Food, music, museums. That's what Montreal is about.
Your favorite dish, personally, what's your go-to?
My favorite dish. I did not prepare for that. Let's see.
That's hard, right? I know it's
Yeah.
hard to choose when you have a lot of options.
Yes, I have a lot of options. Favorite dish? You mean typically Canadian or colonial or?
Yeah, something that's more local that specific to your area that's maybe your go-to if you don't have to worry about calories. I think that's
Yes.
something too, right? We can't always eat everything we want every day, but calories aside, what would you what would your go-to if you could?
Calories aside, I mentioned the establishment that is headed by a chef, but reinterprets colonial era dishes.
Mm-hmm.
I like to revisit those menus. Is there a favorite one that I have? Good God, what is it that I? You caught me off guard.
I know I've seen, and I don't know if in your area, where they do the maple syrup on the snow.
Yes.
And it kind of, okay. And so that's very interesting to me. So that is something that's kind of typical, correct? Where they kind of let it kind of take form within the snow and kind of like a candy.
Correct. It's kind of a candy. It's those establishments are called sugar houses.
Okay.
And the outing that families take to go to the sugar houses are called sugaring out.
Okay.
And so the verb is to sugar out, and you go to those places where you get to eat traditional dishes. And after the meal is completed, you go outside, and the servers go there and they pour maple syrup on the very cold snow. And when it starts to harden a bit, you can roll it around a little wooden stick and you eat it like a popsicle.
Nice. That's
Yes.
cool. I want to definitely have to try that when I get there. Jazz and then the maple syrup on a stick.
Maple syrup on a stick. There you go.
We talked about the importance of educating other people about what we do, and we definitely have to set another date to talk. And we have an event coming this summer for those watching, which will really give a platform for some of these discussions. But just to kind of pique some interest and give a little bit of a preview, the truth is there are so many different standards, regulations in different countries, and sometimes some of the access, language access, is threatened even in some areas, right? And so, not to get too deep into the topic, but what are some ways through your content, I think is what I've observed, but what are ways that you have been able to educate clients on the importance of really the value of language professionals and the importance of investing? Because I think the other part of that is always money, right? It's like, well, is it really worth the spend? And so could you share a little bit, because I know you've shared a lot in your posts, but for those watching, why should they really pay attention to what's going on, and what is the return on investment?
Excellent question. You're right. We do have a PR problem, and the translation and interpreting professions are so poorly known. Clients who come to us generally have very a faint idea of what we actually do behind the scenes. They also do not understand, because it's not their fault. It's because it's never been explained. There is no industry-wide communication plan. There is no value proposition. Nothing has been developed yet. And as you said, it will be a topic for another interview or event. What companies, NGOs, and governments have to focus on is the value of what they're getting, because traditionally translations are paid by the pay is based on the number of words and so many cents per word that you translate. But some words are very easy to translate, some are very, very difficult, and some sentences require a lot of reflection. And sometimes, as in the case of creating new job position titles, there was a lot of reflection involved, and I spent a 2-3 days to come up with 36 position titles. So being paid by the word does not make sense in that respect. Also, potential clients and actual clients have to keep in mind the value that they're getting by having their communications or other manuals or whatever translated into a second language. In the case of a private company, what you get is access to a second market. For example, if your marketing plan says that you can grasp, let's say 15-20% of a certain market in a certain country, what is that 15-20% of the market what is that 15-20% market share of the market worth? Is it worth $300 million, $3 billion? So if your translation service gives you access to a $300 million market, are you going to negotiate the translator because I want to pay less per word? Or are you going to focus on the opportunity that the translation is giving you? Because otherwise, without translators and interpreters, there's no access to a secondary market. There's no multilingual customer support. There's no after-sales service. There's no communications. There's no advertising. There's no communication plan. There's nothing. Even if you're opening a second manufacturing plant in a second country, you need to have your entire procedures translated into French or German or whatever. And that the value of the profits generated by the future manufacturing plan has to be factored into the translation contract.
Well said. There was a lot there to unpack. And
Oh,
just so for
sorry.
those watching, we will be having an event coming up this summer. Follow us if you aren't already. Please like, subscribe, and follow this series of More Than Bilingual, because we're going to be having a panel discussion. I've already invited Patrice, and you can see that there is still a lot of meat left on the bone for us to talk about, and it's been very enjoyable talking to you, Patrice, today about these topics, because we share the same passion, and we have a community of language professionals, interpreters, translators that I think is very strong and very qualified. And unfortunately, there's just not a lot of visibility. So the idea with this series is to share the stories like we did today, but also incentivize those that are watching to do some due diligence and understand that there is intangibles that are not easy to quantify when you look at it from what Patrice was mentioning as a word for word, because there's a lot of things that go into making sure that meaning is transmitted, and that whether it's employees, whether it's a family that are receiving your services, it's very important that the messaging be clear in the language of their heart. So as we start to wrap up here, I want to encourage everyone to follow Patrice on LinkedIn. We're going to have his contact information, his handles on some of the links that you see here in our channel. He's with Capisco Inc., and that is Italian for I understand. I love that name. What was the inspiration there with the name? Just out of curiosity.
Oh, good question. My mother's half Italian.
Okay.
And I spent a lot of time growing up with my maternal grandfather, who spoke English and French as a second and third language only. So he was a huge inspiration in my life. I was very, very close to him. And also in honor of my mother, I wanted to give my office, when I incorporated it, I wanted to give it an Italian name, and I thought Capisco was fitting.
Very good. Love it. Love it. So
Thank you.
As we conclude here, we encourage everybody to continue following us. We're going to be sharing those dates as they come up for that live event coming in this summer. Any final words that you'd like to share, Patrice, that we didn't touch on, that you'd like to share with the audience watching? Feel free to do that.
Oh, thank you. many things, but I'm looking forward to the summer event, and we will be able to address other topics like language industry regulation, protection for my colleague, translators and interpreters, so on and so forth. I also want to take the time to thank you for having me on your show, because I had a ball. I enjoyed myself very much, and you guys are true professionals, very well prepared. You did homework and research, and I'm super happy to be here.
Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Patrice Dussault, and I'm tuned in.